my dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you. Wow. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. Wow. But I'm going to tell you this. Growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself. Wow. And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. That's right. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, "No, wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids?" It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth.
Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. As you can see in the title and in the thumbnail, we're going to be watching another clip from the mainstream media, but this time it's going to be this clown right here. He looks like a clown. All he had to put on is a red little dot and put something on his cheeks, and you got a full-blown clown right here. So we're going to watch another attempt to basically set Byron Donald straight about the comments that he made about Jim Crow and how Jim Crow was better for black people than, we are now. That's how they interpreted the message. But I just played you the clip in the beginning of the video so you can look at it for yourself and get, the messaging that he was trying to deliver, which was that during Jim Crow, black people had better family units than now. That was it. That was the whole premise of his message. During Jim Crow, not because of Jim Crow. That's how they're trying to frame his statement, is that he said that during Jim Crow, black people were better, right? Or not during Jim Crow. They're actually trying to say because of Jim Crow. He said during. It's a time reference, not a causation. He's not saying Jim Crow was, the reason that black people did better. He said during Jim Crow, black people were married at a higher rate. That's all he said. But for some reason, the media and everybody decided to twist up his words. So now he's gone to every mainstream media platform with these liberal propagandists, and they're trying to, spank him into cooperating into the black liberalism mindset. So let's watch this nonsense. What I want you to really pay attention to is just not him trying to correct it, but pay attention to how stupid Al Sharpton is. Not only understanding what Byron Donald is trying to say, but his comprehension level. You'll notice it at the end, that this guy was not even listening to Byron, not one bit. There was not one part of the interview where Al Sharpton actually listened to what Byron was saying and actually comprehended and understood it and took the message for what it was. No, he was just stuck on correcting Byron for a statement that he didn't even make. So let's watch this clip together and then we'll talk about it.
Congressman, welcome to the show. You just heard what Congressman VC had to say about your comments. You've also been criticized by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and the head of the DNC, Jamie Harrison, both of them black. One of them black from Brooklyn, like you were born in Brooklyn, I was born in Brooklyn. What's your response?
Now, that's interesting that he has to mention that they're black. And the reason for that is they believe that black people should all think the same. It's the weirdest mindset that the leftists have, is that, well, we have black people that are trying to say that what you're saying is wrong. So therefore, since they're black, you should listen to us. You know, we're more correct collectively. So therefore, you got to be in lockstep to what we believe. It's absolutely asinine.
My response is that it's very interesting how people can just lie and mischaracterize what I said. The video's on my social media. Go to @Byron Donald. You can listen to it in full. I never said or insinuated anything about Jim Crow being better. Just was talking about the marriage rates of black families in America during that time period. It's an empirical fact.
You mentioned Jim Crow. Wait a minute. I've watched your video. You mentioned Jim Crow 4 times. One time you referred to families. All families did less. They had higher divorce rates in the 60s and 70s as the nation opened up. This wasn't because of Jim Crow kept blacks scared. Blacks couldn't vote. Those families couldn't go downtown. I mean, to in any way infer that the black families were better than Jim Crow. I mean, I've said things that I've later said I shouldn't have said it that way.
I've never said that.
Can't you own that even sanitizing Jim Crow, even if that wasn't your intention, was to say, that's my intention, I'm sorry for using those words?
No.
Well, first of all, I never sanitized Jim Crow. I was just talking about the era in which black marriage rates were higher than they were during the Great Society and every other point in American history.
But why did you say Jim Crow?
Because that's a period of time, Reverend.
The period of time was the 50s. If you wanted to say the 50s, you said Jim Crow.
Well, you know what? It's a great thing that he said Jim Crow, because this is how I see it. Byron Donald is 100% correct, and especially using Jim Crow, because you got a time period where black people were facing the most amount of racism, the most amount of discrimination, the most amount of hate, and they still remained a family unit. You can't say, oh, just because they didn't have no other choices. Well, we have choices now. We have less crime, less racism, and there's no slavery. Black people are not lynched, and we have less family units. We have more black men in prisons. We have kids being raised out of wedlock. We have less two-parent households, and we're facing less discrimination, racism, slavery, lynching, all of the above, but we're less of a family unit than we were during Jim Crow. So how is it that we were in the worst racial time frame that you can possibly mention according to these leftists, but you also have families that were more of a unit back then? How is that? How is that you have a system that was actually oppressing people, but they were also more of a family unit than we are now? That's actually a great point. That's actually something that we have to discuss. And the reason is because of these democratic policies. How is it that people were so oppressed during a time period, but they were more of a family unit than where now there's no oppression, but we're more divided than ever? That doesn't make sense. Excuse me, that's beside the point that Byron was trying to make. The only point that Byron was trying to make was that during Jim Crow, as a time reference, not because of Jim Crow. He never said that. He never said that. That wasn't even insinuated whatsoever. He said during, which is a time reference, and he is 100% accurate. It is indisputable. You cannot argue against that fact. And that's why they can't correct him. That's why they're trying to deviate from his actual point and bring up other factors to try to correct him, because they can't correct him on what he said, because what he said is factually accurate. But besides that point, the question needs to be asked, well, how is it that during a time period that we were the most oppressed, the most discriminated against, we had severely racial Jim Crow laws, how is that during that time frame, not because of that, it might be because of it, but hey, during that time frame, there was more of a family unit than there is now, when we don't have no oppression, no racism. They'll claim there is racism. I've never experienced racism in my life. Racism, discrimination, hatred. You have all these things, but families are less of a unit than they were back then. Families are, voting more progressive than they were back then. We were way more conservative. How is that the case? And that's the question that needs to be answered.
because that was the era in which marriage rates were higher. Look, you had Joe Biden a couple of years ago talking about Jim Crow 2.0, talking about Georgia's law, and he lied. And he lied then. So are we not allowed to talk about that era, or only are we allowed to talk about it when we do want to recall all the history of Jim Crow and all the tragedies that occurred during Jim Crow?
If we're going to talk about the era, Congressman, and you name a race-based law, then you cannot take race out of the fact Jim Crow was a law against black people. You weren't just talking about the era of Dwight Eisenhower and Harry Truman. You named Jim Crow. There's only one way you could deal with Jim Crow, and that's by race. I mean, look, you and I had mutual friends. People say you're a straight shooter. We may disagree on politics. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But look, you were born in Brooklyn, you went down into the South, went to Florida State, you have an interracial marriage, you're a congressman of a district that's not a black district. I mean, how can you even live with yourself acting like Jim Crow was a good era or better era for blacks?
He never said that, bro.
Okay, that's real cute. That's real cute. I did not say that, and I'm not going to sit here and have to insinuate that against me. Because right now you're lying about what I said. I did say Jim Crow. I did reference it 3 times. That's not to say that
why does it matter?
I never said that. Those words never came out of my mouth. When are you gonna get that through your skull and everybody else's skull? I never said that.
That's because that skull big as hell, and it's filled with leftist propaganda. That's why he can't get it through his skull. He's a freaking idiot.
I'm not going to sit here.
You said it was better for us
I'm not gonna let you
under Jim Crow to bring families together. Did you say that?
Hakeem Jeffries was lying. The Biden campaign was lying.
All right.
Go look at my words.
Well,
go look at my words.
Right. People can
did
look
I say
at your
Jim
words.
Crow was better? No, I did not.
You said
I did not say Jim Crow was better. I never said it was good. I did not have nostalgia. I never said any of those things. I was talking about black families and black family marriage rates during that time.
Okay.
And the.
All right. Then what did Jim Crow do to contribute to black families?
Bro, he never said it did anything to contribute to black families.
I'm not talking. Oh my gosh,
you are idiots.
You said under Jim Crow, black families. So explain to me what Jim Crow did to help black families.
The marriage rates during the Jim Crow era were higher for black families
because
up until the point of the Great Society.
He never said that.
I did not say that. I said they were. And this is the problem. Because you're trying to say that I said because of Jim Crow marriages were at a higher rate. I did not say that. I said during. I said during.
But why
I guess
did
we
you
can't refer to
use Jim
time
Crow?
periods
Jim
then,
Crow
Reverend.
was
That
a
don't make
race
no
law.
sense.
Well, first of all, under Great Society did programs like manpower training, model cities, train young people. HEW didn't do anything about families. It's health, education, welfare. So, I mean, what are you talking about? They were not the antithesis to marriage. I mean, Congressman, all right, let's go to this. Donald Trump suggested twice, just this week, that he might seek retribution against political enemies of if he's elected president. He also tried to link his legal problems to the injustices African Americans have suffered at the hand of our legal system. Why should black Americans believe that Trump is serious about criminal justice reform when he only seems concerned about it when it applied to him?
Now, watch this part. This is where it gets idiotic. So they're going to talk about criminal justice reform, especially during the George Floyd era. And you're going to have Al Sharpton say that Donald Trump did not try to do anything as far as police reform, criminal justice reform. But Byron Donald is going to explain how Trump was supportive of a bill, a criminal justice reform bill or something like that. But there was something in the bill that they did not like. And then the other bill that the Democrats pushed, they had something in that bill that Trump did not like. Let me correct myself. And then there was one that Tim Scott wrote that Donald Trump was supportive of and Republicans were supportive of. But in that bill was something that the Democrats wanted to include, but the Republicans didn't, which was, I think it was something about immunity, where, police officers no longer get to have immunity. And Democrats wanted to take that out of the bill. And then the Republicans wanted to keep it in the bill. And Byron Donald is trying to explain that to Al Sharpton, and just watch how this whole thing just goes over his whole head. This is absolutely hilarious.
the record. You're from Brooklyn, what he did around the Central Park case. You know the record that he was president when George Floyd was killed by police. He said nothing. Had protesters move from in front of a church, made a speech denouncing the protesters. He has no problem talking about locking up his political opponents or homeless or asylum seekers. But he now wants to act like he's a victim of something. What is your response to that, Congressman?
Well, first of all, during the Trump presidency, he also signed into law reforms to criminal justice reform, the first step back, which actually helped get a lot of people released who were imprisoned under the '94 crime bill that was authored by Joe Biden. One of the worst pieces of crime legislation that's really impacted a lot of people in the black community.
You and I agree on the '94 crime bill. I marched on it, and Joe Biden has said that it went too far. But Donald Trump has not dealt with his own record of discrimination. If you're talking about the two candidates, Donald Trump, unlike Biden, who talked about how the crime bill did go too far, Donald Trump has not dealt with his discrimination, that he was sued by the Justice Department in housing, what he did with Central Park 5, what he's done in various race cases, and explained as president what he did with George Floyd.
What did he do with George Floyd? He didn't do anything with George Floyd. What are you talking about?
Right.
What did he do against it? He did not do anything. The only thing he said is that riots in America do need to stop. Well, first of all, let's talk about that legislation, because there were actually there were two bills that were going through Congress at the time. The bill that could have went through and passed was the one by Senator Tim Scott, and the only difference between that bill and the bill that was being moved by my Democrat colleagues is because my Democrat colleagues wanted to get rid of qualified immunity. That was the only difference in the bill. Local law enforcement universally said, if you get rid of qualified immunity, you're going to have less officers on the streets. And so the Democrats did not want that bill to go forward. I believe Nancy Pelosi was speaker at the time, and that's why that bill could not get through the House.
They did not vote for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And did you vote for it, you in Congress?
I wasn't in Congress at the time when that occurred, but I will tell you that the reason I was not in Congress. I got in 2020.
Did you support
because
it?
that bill would have gotten rid of qualified immunity. And getting rid of qualified immunity would have mean less officers on the street, which is bad for public safety.
Facts.
So the only way you would have supported a bill to hold police accountable is if police would not be individually accountable? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because if you put most police officers make $60,000 to $70,000 a year. If they are not individually liable in civil court, how many people are going to sign up to be police officers?
Facts.
With all the millions of encounters they go through every single year, people aren't going to do that. That's not my words. That's the words of officers I talk to.
Maybe if they knew they were liable, they would behave
the vast
differently.
majority of officers do not do that. The vast majority of officers are good public servants. They serve our communities every single day.
The vast majority of people, Congressman, don't commit crimes, but that doesn't mean we don't need laws. Let me go to this one.
But qualified immunity is a bad solution. It would have not been good. It would have not been good.
And Donald Trump opposed it and did not come with any police reform at all. Marjorie Taylor Greene, let's go
Tim
to
Scott had a bill that
what police reform
Tim Scott had a bill that Donald Trump supported. Go back to the Tim Scott bill, which was moving through the Senate. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't hear it in the House.
What was the police reform bill that happened during George Floyd that Donald Trump, as president of the United States, when George Floyd was killed, what did he support for police reform? Donald Trump.
At the time, Donald Trump was supporting the Tim Scott measure that could not get a hearing in the House because Nancy Pelosi wouldn't allow it. You can have Senator Scott on. He'll tell you about it. I'm quite sure he will.
I met with Senator Scott. And what I'm saying to you is, did Donald Trump then say, we'll do this about police reform? This is wrong what happened to George Floyd?
Nancy Pelosi would not let it through the House. She was speaker. You should ask Nancy why she didn't put it on the floor.
No, I'm asking you then, what was the Republican bill around reform?
Bro.
The man was killed.
Bro, he just told you. He just told you. Tim Scott had a bill. Tim Scott is the Republican you're talking about. Bro, I told you guys, the comprehension level is not there. This dude is a moron. He was not paying attention. Or if he was paying attention, what he was listening to was not computing in his head. There was no comprehension going on whatsoever. Let's go back a few seconds here.
you, then what was the Republican bill around reform? A man was
I just
killed.
told
He
you
was
it was the Tim
president.
Scott. I just told you the bill. It's the Tim Scott bill. And
When
you keep
Donald
asking the
Trump
same
went
question.
in
Doesn't
front of
change
that
fact.
church and stood up there with the Bible, he did not tout any reform bill at all. End of story. And you and I both know that. Come
I'm
on.
sorry. So the only bills that matter, the only bills that matter are the ones that actually have a name that a president
No, the only
cites,
bill,
not the
he could
actual
have named the
legislation
bill.
that's moving through
He
Congress.
could have named the bill. He
Come
was
on now.
president of the
You already
United
know that's a
States.
ridiculous standard.
Well, then why didn't
Ridiculous.
Tim
That's a
Scott's
ridiculous
bill?
standard.
If Tim Scott's was the
Yes.
bill, then why didn't the president come out and call on the Congress and the country to rally around that bill? He said nothing. You
Listen,
know it, and I
I'm
know
not,
it.
First of all, I don't know. Donald Trump talks a lot. You should ask him that question.
Well,
I
he
will
does
tell
talk a
you
lot.
that Nancy Pelosi did not let that bill come up in the House. She was Speaker. Ask her.
There you go. There you go. These people are idiots, man. I mean, it is absolutely no point in debating with these people. Absolutely no point. But I mean, I understand why Byron, is going on these platforms, but he shouldn't. He shouldn't, because these people are not debating in good faith. I mean, you just listen to this debate here. There was no good faith argument whatsoever. There was not one time where he actually conceded. There's never a time where they actually concede and say, oh, you know what, you're right. We did misconstrue your words. We appreciate you coming on this platform and explaining to us what you actually meant. We apologize if we misconstrued it or, took it for something that it really wasn't. That never happens. That never, ever happens. And that should be a signal to these politicians, to these Republicans, to never go on these platforms. There's no way that every Republican has made a statement that is always inaccurate and that the mainstream media doesn't go back and correct what they said about what the politician said. If that has never happened, it's never going to happen. They've never apologized. Mainstream media has never apologized by saying, we took his words out of context. That's really not what he was trying to say. This was it. That never happens. So if that never, ever happened, there's no point in any of these politicians going on these platforms and trying to explain themselves if the mainstream media is never going to apologize for misinterpreting their words. If that has never happened for any politicians, it's never going to happen for anyone moving forward. There's no point in going to MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, none of that. There's really no point. But that's why I love social media, because eventually there will be no point in people going to the mainstream media. You can just go on there and make a video on social media and post it. That you'll get the same amount of viewership that you would on the mainstream platform. People are shying away from watching the news anyway. So I thought this was amazing. I mean, this is just another great example of, one, they're just here to push a narrative. It doesn't matter if you come out here and have a perfect explanation for what you said or what you believe. They're still going to run with what their agenda was for that topic at hand, and this is a great example of it. Byron Donald explained himself well multiple times, explained the bill that Republicans were trying to pass, how Sharpton could not compute or comprehend it. I mean, I hate to say it, sometimes I feel like I'm way smarter than some of these people, because there's no way, like, these people should have the jobs that they do. Like, absolutely no way. It makes me laugh, bro. This is crazy. But anyway, phenomenal, right? I love watching these videos. Great entertainment for both of us. Thank you for watching, guys. Like the video down below. If you enjoyed the content, of course, subscribe to the channel for more content. See you on the next one. Peace.